So the other day, I found myself daydreaming, looking at the window. And my daydream was I had gotten into the best teacher retirement community ever. We're talking the creme de la creme of teacher retirement communities, right? I had sent in my application. I got in, and they said, Oliver, we're going to fly you down to wherever this community is. Come on down. We've got one interview question for you. So I fly down there, and I get there, and they sit me down. They tell me all my great qualifications. The person on the other side of the table says, if you can answer this one question and give us the correct answer, you are in to the world's greatest teacher retirement community. If not, you're out. And I'm like, okay, I think I can do this. Go ahead. So the guy looks at me and says, what qualities make for the best student? My jaw drops, my eyes bug out, and I go, Welcome to Middle School Madness, a podcast about teaching and things that are interesting to teachers. My name is Oliver Wieheog, and I am a 26-year veteran of the middle school classroom. Today I have with me Seth is going to join us to help us discuss what qualities make for the best students. Seth, how you doing today?
Hey, so happy to be here, man. Thanks for inviting me on the show. I'm a teacher. What do you say? You said 26 years.
I've been 26 years.
I've been teaching for 21 years now. Was a learning support teacher for a long time, so I guess I've had this thought a few times. What do I love in a student, and sometimes sometimes I've had this thought in the past. I've thought about what I've loved in my students, and I've also thought about what's frustrated me a few days. But the last few years, I've switched over to a TV movie production teacher, so I've been an elective teacher for the last few days, and I guess the students sign up for our class now, so that changes things a little bit.
A lot. I mean, we're lucky. We have students that really want to take our class, and even then, we get a wide range of students. So the first thing I did is I typed into AI, right? Because AI is the thing out there, and I wrote in what qualities make for the best student. And the three things I got right off the bat were curiosity, self-motivation, and then I got adaptability, which was not bad. These are all good, and these are just boom, boom, boom. But then I went and typed into Google's AI, same question, what qualities make for the best students, and I got three completely different qualities. So I guess when I was looking at these, and there's a ton of qualities, and it went on over and over, it's like maybe we should attack this question by subtraction. What if we just subtracted out what we don't want? Like not the negative, not the negative qualities. Like clearly no one likes a disruptive student, antsy student, all of that. But you're looking at what are qualities we know right off the bat don't fall into this in a positive way. And the first one I thought of was, well, a best student doesn't have to be straight A's or honor roll. That was my first thought.
Yeah, you know what? In my experience, it's not at all what you're looking for in a student. I think that from a student's perspective, they think that that's what they need to be. They need to be perfect. But the last thing I need from a student is to be perfect.
Right.
Yeah, I would absolutely subtract that one. One that I would add to the list is I don't really need a student. It's funny that you mentioned antsy before. I really don't need you to be perfectly still. I don't need you to sit in your chair at all times. I don't need you to focus your eyes on me like you're looking through my soul. I don't really need that type of attention as a teacher. Paying attention's good, but at the same time, you don't need to be perfect at it.
And I was thinking, you don't need because it's so hilarious. I don't need you to be the Hermione Granger. You don't always have to have your hand in the air waving. Like you could subtract that out right away. I don't need a billion questions from you all the time or a billion answers because you want to be the first person to do it. We could subtract that out.
Yeah, there's almost a little bit of showboating that can happen in the classroom between students. One student wants to be the first one to get their hand raised. Yeah, definitely don't need that. I guess the last one that I can think of off the top of my head that I would add to the list is, which I think a lot of people think teachers need this from a student, but, a student that doesn't make mistakes. So not only are they super smart or not only do I not need a student that's super smart, but I also don't mind, having a student that actually makes mistakes. Failure is such a great tool. I mean, you got to learn to make mistakes. I want students to make mistakes. You probably shouldn't be in our class if you never make a mistake. What would be the point?
And I would think in any grade, right, whether you're kindergarten, senior, the whole idea is you make mistakes. How many times has a teacher said, well, the best teacher out there is experience. Experience has got to have failure. No one gets to be an adult without making mistakes, and that's how it goes in education as well.
I mean, true wisdom, right? Defined by the amount of time that you've been on this earth, and usually defined by the amount of mistakes you've made and overcame them.
And so this was interesting because, once again, I was thinking about a college friend whose code name was Teflon. And it wasn't because he was tough or anything. Like, he really had, unfortunately, a nondescript personality, and nothing stuck. Like, it was hard to give him a nickname because nothing stuck. Like, boy, that's kind of true in the classroom. Like, when I thought of what makes for a best student, if you show up and you sit there and you get it done and there's nothing that, I don't know, sticks because you never ask a question, because you never get involved, but you do all the work and follow along, it's like, wow, is that really what I would put under a quality of a good student? You're just there, but you don't add anything, yet strangely enough, you get a good grade in the class.
I mean, there's a lot to be said about the student that ends up surprising you by the amount of time that you spend with them. You know, those are the ones that actually stick in your memory. Right. I remember when they barely could read, getting out a sentence in class. They were actually scared to do it. And then, I have a young lady in my mind that I can remember, severely dyslexic, and would spend the whole, most of the year being very scared to speak in class, especially to read in class. And, over the 2 years that I interacted with her, she was raising her hand and volunteering and speaking in class, and then she was reading in class, and built some confidence in that way. So you love to see that. Those are the students that actually stick in your memory in a positive manner.
Yeah, which of course now, I mean, we've subtracted a lot. We can begin to think about, all right, but what is that quality? And because we rank things all the time, that's how we are, I think, as humans. I wrote down that my number one quality that I wanted to see in a student, and it's a strange quality because you can't really measure it scientifically, there's no way to measure it, but you just touched upon it. It's growth and maturity. Yeah. I don't mind if a student starts out in September and maybe has a nanosecond of an ability to concentrate, because we frame our answers like, well, I'm at a middle school, I got 12 to 14-year-olds. But as long as that squirrely kid who maybe only can do it for 1 second, and then as the year progresses, you see they can focus more, they have more concentration, they're beginning to grow up. What used to be a one-sentence answer now becomes two, or better yet, in our world, maybe it's a one-word answer.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, even I watch a lot of sports, and I know you and I both are guilty of being coaches. But being a coach, I've heard this many times at the college level. They're talking after the game that we're growing as a team, and that's always a positive comment. And it's what, even at that elite level of athletics, it's exactly what they're looking for also. They want to grow as a team. They want to grow those individual players so that they find more of their, in their own game that, when put together, they accomplish something that they weren't able to in the first game. If you're playing great basketball at the end of the season, that's a whole lot better than playing great basketball only the first game of the season.
It is. And I know a lot of times, it's kind of funny because when you think about the best students, and we mentioned the students that really have no impact on you whatsoever because they sit there. But I do like sometimes when a student, you've got to have that conversation with them after class. And after class, a lot of times I'll be like, hey, what I want is I want you to show up tomorrow, show me the best of who you are, and you've taken, and I tend to do this, I then take one step forward. I go, and just show me that you've grown up just a little. It's not a lot. I go, but just a little. I go, because then you will have given me the greatest gift ever, and I got to watch you grow up.
And the thing is, you're somewhat being facetious about it, but at the same time, you literally, that's the one thing that when you see it in education as a teacher, it's the one thing that actually feels tangible, because we don't get to look at a project at the end of the day that we accomplished. We built that brick wall, or we poured that concrete slab. But when you actually, right there in front of your face, see a student grow, I mean, that is our concrete slab that's stained nicely, and your customer's really pleased about it.
It's nice. It is nice.
It's hard to have those moments are few and far between, but man, are they exceptional when they happen.
They really are. And I like to say at the end of the year, when they leave, hey, you got to do me the favor. Come back in 4 years. I want to know how the story ends. And they give you that look like, what do you mean? I'm like, you're not going to look the way, sound the way, move the same way. Your muscles are going to come in because we're in middle school. But I want to know how that story ends. I want to know that, who did you grow into? So when it comes to equality for a best student, yeah, growth and maturity is probably my number one thing that I would like.
When you brought it up, the number one, and again, if we're going to rank them, my number one, quality that I'm looking for in a student, and I guess I'm not really thinking of it from a perspective of a 12 to 14-year-old like you were. I'm more thinking of elementary, middle school, college age, grad school student, an 80-year-old man that's still learning.
You're right.
I'm thinking of being a student, like a student in life, and that's really my answer. I'm looking for a student that understands the idea that learning is this journey. And, I know it served me well. There was a time where I thought, I've learned enough. But the older I get and the little bit wiser, I suppose, that I get, the more I realize that I'm at my best. I'm being my best as a student when I am accepting and wanting that, thirsting for the knowledge that's out there. I'm kind of reminded of this old Edgar Allan Poe poem that I co-taught in an English class a few years ago, and we encountered this poem. It's called El Dorado, and there's a knight, and he's in search of this fountain of youth, this heaven at the end of the story, and but he runs into a shadow, and the shadow speaks to him, and the shadow kind of informs him of something a little bit more wise than what he's looking for, and it's the realization of the heaven, the fountain of youth, the answer to everything, the knowledge is actually in the journey itself.
Right.
And I feel that's really, it's been an important quality that I try to instill in my students. But I love when a student comes in and they have a thirst for knowledge. They want to, they're desperate for, hey, how does that work? Or, if I press this, what happens? I love that quality in a student. I want a student that also, that just wants that for life and wants to, and also realizes that realization that it is not going to be over in one day. You're not going to learn how to be a film expert in a day in our class. That's for sure.
Well, that's why I like, and I agree. Number 3 on my list was curiosity to explore. Because I'm always kind of interested. Sometimes, like the Teflon student, they're willing to just sit there and I don't know, take it kind of. Like, I'm going to talk, you are going to do, and then they do it. Yeah. But I like the student who says, well, what if as you said, they've got an innate curiosity. And I don't know if you can teach curiosity, right? Like, I don't know if it comes, or if curiosity is somehow then mixed with that idea. Eventually, I'm going to hit a subject somewhere in my educational career that's just going to motivate me to begin to ask that question, right? And I don't know if that comes in your senior year. Everybody's different. Maybe that blends in with growth and maturity, but when a student walks up and asks me a question, and I'm like, well, I never thought of it that way, or I don't see it from your point of view, you're like, that's a great student, because now they're thinking independently.
I have confidence on my list, and I feel like it really is. It's a different way of saying exactly what you are saying. It's the confidence of being able to struggle. It's the confidence to be able to approach a new idea and go after it, even though you're unsure of it. It's the confidence to be creative. Yeah. It's the confidence to be able to fail. It's when I have a student that is willing to put themselves out there, as they say, that's when a student is able to do their best learning. That's when they're able to collect the most amount of information, I feel. It's when they learn the best.
Man, is that hard, though.
especially for a middle schooler.
That is so hard.
I mean, confidence for a middle schooler, that is the fountain of youth. That's a tough one to find.
It is, because to be curious means you've got to go outside of the pack and ask questions and kind of put yourself out there, which in many ways would go against a middle schooler at all, where you just want to fit in, wear the same clothes, have the same thinking, have your friends for a day. But I love those moments where they are just naturally curious, and we talk about this especially in the editing software, any kind of software, and begin to explore it and press the buttons and say, well, what happens about this? What happens is that? Whether they ask the question or just go and do it. Sometimes I like it where they come up like, hey, Mr. Reed, look what I created. And you're like, oh, my God, you figured out filters and transitions, and I never taught that. That's the best.
Yeah, the student that takes what they learned in school and they have the confidence to go ahead and push the buttons to try it out at home, and then are coming back in the next day. I mean, it's that again. Those are those moments that are they're few and far between. But that's the project that we love to take a look at
all the time.
And again, it's not your perfect student. It's like we subtracted that earlier. I mean, it's not your perfect student. It's your curious student.
Yeah. And it's funny, now that I look at my list, number 2 I had on there, which does kind of dovetail with number 3, which was curiosity, is thinking before you ask. And this is a common problem, whether it's with my own kids. Hey, Dad, where's my jacket? And you're like, well, I don't know. Have you looked for your jacket yet? And I think teachers get this all the time. The students intrinsically know they can come to you and ask the question, and we always feel good as teachers to literally give the answer, because then it makes us feel good. Like, I know the answer. I am the ivory tower of answers and knowledge.
I am the gatekeeper to all knowledge that exists in this world. You know? I'm glad I don't have that role.
There's so much to know out there. But when the student, you see them thinking and problem solving on their own, I mean, that's just like, yeah, that to me is a quality that makes for a really, really good student.
I have, so as you know, I'm in the lifelong journey of learning the guitar, and I have a guitar teacher that I watch online, YouTube, Tomo, I'll put a little plug for him, Tomo Fujita Music on YouTube, and he's actually John Mayer's guitar teacher. They've worked together at Berkeley, but he also, gives John a lot of advice. So I love this guy. He's a scholar. He makes you feel good about yourself as you're learning the guitar. But his piece of advice, I'll steal his. His is, be kind to yourself when you're learning something. And I feel like my students that are kind to themselves, they actually approach their own learning with a kindness and a forgiveness of, don't try to be, this is Tomo's advice to me as a guitar player. Don't try to be too quick. You're going to be as fast as you're going to be. Don't try to learn too much. You're going to learn as much as you can possibly learn. Don't compare yourself to everybody around you. And I'm taking this as advice as an adult, but I want to share this with my students. Stop comparing yourself to everybody around you. A great student realizes that they're going to learn at the rate at which they learn, and just accept that and be kind to yourself when you're doing it. I love that advice from Tomo Fujita.
Man, that's good advice, but that's hard in application.
It sure
is hard in application. Whether I think you're, again, a 12-year-old, a 54-year-old, whatever. That is hard to do, because the first thing we always want to gravitate towards is, well, Seth is a better teacher than me, or so-and-so can bike faster on the bike or swim better in the pool. It's hard not to compare yourself. I think that's always step one. I think everybody starts at step one of comparing themselves. But when you get to that, and it doesn't, I don't know what age it ever comes, but it eventually does. And you're like, you know what? I just got to be me. And working in a middle school, just being you, that's a big chore. It
is. I mean, they as you mentioned before, they want to wear the same shoes. They want to dress in the same shirt. They want to blend in. Our students don't often like being brought into attention, whether it's good or it's bad.
Yep.
They just kind of want to be a part of the class and blend in. But when you see them starting to come out of that towards the end of the year, as they're getting a little bit more mature, they start to be kind to themselves. They start to find their confidence. They start to show up and have their own ideas and their own curiosities. And, that's what we're really looking for. Or at least that's what I'm looking for in my classroom. I love a student that is willing to make mistakes and forgives himself for it and stops worrying about, well, my mistake was worse than your mistake.
Right.
Comparing mistake levels. I mean, my goodness, it sounds silly when you say it out loud, but I think we do it all the time.
We do it all the time.
Well, my mistake was worse than your mistake, so I must be worse than you are at something that we're both not good at. It's silly land.
It's crazy. It really is crazy. And you're right. It always is measured in the school year because they change so much from September all the way down to early June. And when you see them grow, that's a great student. When you see them think independently and ask questions outside of the realm of I'm not thinking, will you, here's my question, but just give me the answer. Like that's even better. And that really, you put those two together, well, what is that student when you blend those two together? That's a curious student.
Yeah, 100%. Curious, confident student and willing to go for it. That's what you're looking for. It's never the perfect student. It's never the student that's just so easy. The easy students, like you mentioned, the ones that that almost disappear.
Yeah. I always wonder aside of me, I always wonder what they grow into. So now that we got our top three, the question is, does the guy on the other side of the table let us in? Do we even get into the mysterious, awesome, highest level, most luxurious, best teacher retirement community ever?
Do they have shuffleboard at that retirement community for
I would
teachers?
Hope so.
I think so. I don't even know how to play shuffleboard. I guess I'm not at the age level yet. That's something that I got to figure out here before I retire.
Well, the sad story is, for another day, I played it in my youth way too much. But we'll save that for another time. And I don't even know, because there's so many qualities that I saw in AI. There are so many qualities when I just searched for it that I just had to pick three. Those were my three. I would like to think the guy lets me in. Oh, yeah, Mr. Weir, those are very fond answers. You seem like you were a good teacher and you served well, but I got to tell you, where'd you grow up? And I would say Cleveland, and he goes, nope, you're not getting it. They're like, wait a minute, what about the question you asked me? Well, you grew up in Cleveland. How many Super Bowls do they have? And I'll be like, I get it. I'll just go to the second-rate one.
You'd say, what about the Indians? What about the Indians?
And once again, don't get me started. So one word of Cleveland, they'll be like, no. But we're glad you spent the other half of your life outside of Pittsburgh. That was good.
So you're saying if I answer these answers and I'm also from Pittsburgh,
you're getting in.
Nice.
You're getting in. That guy's going to look at you.
Shuffleboard every day.
Shuffleboard every day, right? That is fantastic. And that's the bell. It is time to shut down the computer, throw the switch on the lights, and leave the greatest playground in all of the world, your classroom. Hey, Seth, thanks for coming on the show today. It was great hearing your opinions.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. It was fun.
Yeah, it was. Thanks for listening. And if you would like to be on the show, send me an email. Leave a comment down below. Thank you for being a teacher. The world definitely needs good teachers. And until the next one, we'll see you in the hallway.